Welcome to GeoIgnite 2020 Online. My name is Jonathan Murphy. I'm the Managing Director of Geomatics Canada. I'm going to be your Zoom host for the next 3 days. First, let me start by thanking our gold sponsors, MDA and Maxar, as well as our silver sponsors, Quantum Spatial Canada and Deploy Solutions. On behalf of our committee for GeoIgnite, I want to thank you all for being here. There are people all over the world tuning into the conference, as well as across Canada, of course. Due to the global pandemic, this is the way we're having to meet. The conference committee decided this year that we still wanted to do a conference. We felt it was important. We didn't want to let the virus kind of win on that one. We wanted to move forward and get together. So the theme for this year is leadership in times of disruption. So we're presenting a program with geospatial technology updates, leadership, but also there's going to be quite a few talks about kind of Canada's COVID response and what some departments have been doing there. It's going to be very interesting and very engaging. So thank you very much for being here. This GeoIgnite has been very much a build the boat as we sail it experience for us on the team. This is our first time doing a Zoom conference. So we're learning. We're going to take your feedback. We're going to improve as we go. We also want to roll out new programming in the coming months on other topics, other forums and summits on geospatial programming that we think is going to be of interest to the community. So if anybody's interested in working with us on that and you've got something that you want to share, please get in touch with me. There's contact information on the geoignite.ca website. So the goal of GeoIgnite, whether it's in the real world in person or online, is to bring people together and share information. So that's still the goal. That's what we're going to do. Thank you again for being here and being a part of that. We've put together a program. We have some social events. So each night, tonight and tomorrow, we at 6 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to have kind of a cocktail hour type of event with Maxar and Deploy Solutions. So that's going to be fun. Tonight is Maxar. The other thing that we're doing that's kind of interesting and new is we've created a Slack channel. So if you're having problems with technical support, or you want to network with people, or you just want to chat, we've created a GeoIgnite Slack channel. So you'll find that by going to the geoignite.ca website. Under the event information tab, you're going to see a Slack link. So jump in there and check that out. I'm going to talk a little bit now about how we've set up this event. So essentially, the conference is a mixture of live events and pre-taped talks. And we've set aside 15 minutes between the talks to let us have time to set up. The other thing is that sometimes there's 2 Zoom rooms going on at the same time. So you have a choice as to what you want to look at. So you're going to be choosing in the geoignite.ca conference website software. There's a video link in the schedule in each of the items. Most of the time you can stay in one Zoom room if that's the programming is in that Zoom room that you want to see all that stuff, but you can switch back and forth. Myself and Tessa will be running the Q&A portions after the speakers have done their bit, and we'll be taking questions from the audience. Please use the Q&A tool in Zoom for that. If you are having any trouble with technical support, or you lose a connection, or something happens unexpected on the technical side, don't worry. We are taping the conference, and in the future, we will make those available. So let me close out by saying something about our first keynote. So we're really lucky to have Éric Loubier, the Director General of the Canada Centre for Mapping and Earth Observation, with us. And his talk is titled Geospatial Opportunities in COVID Times. So thank you all again. Welcome to the conference, and I hope you get a lot out of it. Thank you very much. Now it's time for Éric's talk.
Good morning, participants of this first virtual GeoIgnite event. It's wonderful to see that despite all of the changes happening around us, we have found time to make this event happen. So congratulations to the organizing committee for pulling it together. Si vous êtes ici aujourd'hui à titre de membre de la communauté géomatique, c'est que vous croyez vous aussi, tout comme moi, fermement à ce que nous faisons et à l'importance de se rencontrer, ne serait-ce que virtuellement, afin de partager nos idées et notre vision de l'avenir. So welcome to this presentation, and thank you for the opportunity for me to address you today. Some of you may know me. My name is Éric Loubier. I'm in my first year as Director General of the Canadian Centre for Mapping and Earth Observation, CCMEO for an acronym, situated in Natural Resources Canada, the federal department responsible for science and economic sustainability of the energy, mining, and forestry sector. I've been with government for 20 years, most of it with Natural Resources Canada, CCMEO, but a few years recently at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada as Director of Science Policy and Partnerships. So I'm coming back to CCMEO. Previous to these 20 years in government, I was with the private sector, but also in geomatics. The organization under my leadership, CCMEO, is an organization of about 250 employees whose key mission is to provide pan-Canadian geospatial policy, program leadership, and innovation, scientific and technical geomatics and earth observation tool, techniques, application, and data. It's fairly small compared to the size of this country. However, our organization is made up of experts, some of the best in the world, across the whole geospatial value chain, from satellite receiving ground station to some of the best remote sensing scientists, excelling in new ways of extracting information from EO, geomaticians, geospatial AI experts, open data dissemination, cloud platform development, geoanalytics, and also managing historical records of Canada through 6 million of air photos, some dating back to the 1920s. But with machine learning, AI, big data analytics, significant transformation is upon us. And that puts us in a very exciting environment. If you combine that in government with whole of government approach, like IMIT strategic planning, new digital policies, and cloud-first strategies, we are being pushed to think outside the box. Renew the way we use to produce data, create knowledge, and disseminate information. To innovate, to deliver new ways, and accept that some of our traditional business lines may not be relevant as they used to be, and there's a need to renew them. At CCMEO, we are excited about what that represents and the opportunity to transform our business, to focus on our government and department's priority, and bring more value and improve the service we deliver to Canadians. So we've all heard the term new normal. Well, what does that mean? COVID has not missed a single person, a single business, a single country in its impact. But over the next few years, we will see tremendous change as we emerge from this pandemic. For us, throughout the year, we felt the pressure of the surge in demand for geospatial service. And that's beyond COVID. You'll remember massive snowfalls in Newfoundland and Labrador, protests along our railways, and assessment and trying to assess the impact of our ability to move commodity across the country. Spring flooded in central Canada and other provinces as well, and assessing the impact of that on health and safety of our citizens. All of that in a COVID context, providing also, as you know, additional support, capability, expertise, tools and services to help core organization, in the pandemic response. So we've experienced significant disruption, Sometimes, as you know, disruption is key to writing new roadmaps, to developing new plans and strategies. Difficult moments in history provide opportunities for innovation to come at the forefront. C'est donc là que nous nous trouvons aujourd'hui, que l'on soit confortable ou non avec cet environnement de transformation. Nous avons devant nous une opportunité unique de mettre en place de nouvelles façons de faire, selon de nouveaux paradigmes, et de favoriser l'adoption de technologies géospatiales au sein de l'ensemble de l'appareil gouvernemental et d'aller bien au-delà des barrières que nous sommes trop souvent imposées nous-mêmes. L'exemple de l'adoption de nouvelles façons de travailler, virtuelles, avec des outils qu'on ne connaissait pas il y a quelque temps, est un bel exemple de comment nous sommes capables de réagir rapidement et de retrouver un environnement tout aussi efficace, sinon plus, que ce que nous avions avant. Donc, la question qui se pose à nous, notre communauté géomatique, c'est comment pouvons-nous profiter de cette ouverture à adopter de nouvelles politiques, de nouvelles approches, de nouvelles technologies dans notre domaine et d'amener tout le reste de l'appareil gouvernemental et de la société, pourquoi pas, avec nous dans ces changements. So, how do we ride that wave and turn a terrible situation for the globe into something positive? And how can the geospatial community rally together to do better, to improve crisis outcomes for Canadians? I don't need to sell all of this to you, I'm sure. We know as a community of champions around geomatics that geospatial information and Earth observation are tools that help decision makers develop strategies, increase awareness of natural hazards, and more importantly, provide the foundation for prevention. It is the deep knowledge of our world from a geospatial perspective that helps us reach the goal of reducing human, social, economic, and environmental losses due to natural hazards and related disasters. Combining interoperable data layers is at the foundation of good emergency management. You will likely hear more about this throughout this conference, including Dr. Heather McGrath's presentation on flood mapping at CCMEO. Our work and that of other experts across the country enables responders to plan, to visualize, and to know what's happening on the ground. It also enables us to see things we would not otherwise be able to see, like seeing how flood extent and ice jams affect vulnerable populations. It enables responders to focus their often limited resources to where it's needed the most. But actually knowing what's happening, is that enough? Is there more we can do? Is there more we should do? I will now showcase an example of our COVID response. And we will also discuss, when we come back together as a group, how we can even go further moving forward. There are literally hundreds of dashboards, numbers, statistics, prediction being published out there on the web and in the media. Many are public, but also private organizations are scraping the internet for as much data as they can get their hands on and putting up statistics they think people want to know or should know. Il y a toutefois un risque que la donnée présentée soit incomplète, parfois erronée ou manquante dans certaines régions. C'est pourquoi il devenait important de rassembler de nombreux acteurs à différents niveaux, de différentes juridictions, afin de fournir un portrait le plus global et le plus précis possible. Donc, en février, l'Agence de la santé publique canadienne a pris conscience que la géomatique pouvait jouer un rôle crucial afin de bien informer les Canadiens au sujet de la pandémie. The Public Health Agency of Canada, PHAC, reached out to CCMEO and StatScan, and the federal geospatial community mobilized itself in an unprecedented way. A task team was established, and a few tough leaders of the federal geospatial platform, of CCMEO's emergency geomatics team, of Statistics Canada Statistics Geomatics Center, all in all, over 100 of our best experts came together in a way never seen before, removing their organizational hats and mobilizing a geospatial and statistical community and capacity to come together to the task and serve the need of the health agency. And also, Shared Service Canada basically said to us, tell us what you need and we'll make it happen. And they did. And also did the private sector, who lent a tremendous hand. Esri Canada, Amazon Web Service, incredible hours and hours of support at little or no cost. So the needs were clear. Canadians needed to see on a map what was happening in the world, in their country, in their provinces, as geospatial is likely the best way to visualize information quickly. While sometimes government takes forever to build and adopt technology, thanks to methodological work that we have been doing through the Federal Geospatial Platform, a partnership amongst a number of federal organizations to establish a cloud-based enterprise GIS platform for all of Canada. We were able to stand up state-of-the-art infrastructure in less than 72 hours. Yes, 72 hours in the Shared Service Canada environment. So what does this mean? Well, it meant that for the first time, the Government of Canada had a multi-departmental, geospatially enabled cloud environment with high availability and reliability, accessible by any department. Essentially one environment, one investment for many users. It meant also that data could be clean and standardized, shared from a single location in the cloud. No copies from data center to data center. All interested departments scrambling for the same information from the same overwhelmed sources like provincial and territorial health organization could finally be accessed from the same single location. One source of data, again, many users. It meant as well powerful computing that could be enabled for non-demand analytics rather than acquiring multiple licenses that would remain dormant outside of a crisis situation, wasting taxpayers' dollars. So essentially, only investment when it's needed. This is how government should be leveraging geospatial data, its expertise, and the infrastructure that supports it moving forward. The dashboards created have been viewed in the millions of times. You may as well have seen it behind Dr. Tam when she was doing her media releases. So epidemiologists now have partners in the geospatial community to whom they can work with and rely on. The private sector as well has been there with us, doing what they do best. Canadians have now something official from the federal government upon which they can have confidence. Epidemiological awareness. As health is a provincial and territorial jurisdiction, they are the holders of the most of the health data. This sometimes creates challenges, as you may know, regarding uniformity, consistency. The manner in which the data was captured and structured was different between health region, let alone provinces. So there was no easy way to share, exchange, manage, integrate health data before the pandemic. So the pressure was on experts to do this in a crisis situation. And as I said earlier, we reacted very well in this context. But nevertheless, it was a reactive response. So we need to do better than be reactive. We need to have at the ready data from multiple sources, organizations, government, academia, and science organization that is needed in case of emergency, not because it has emerged. And that data should be standardized, or precious time is wasted manipulating and cleaning massive amounts of data in a short amount of time. And all of that should be done in a cloud infrastructure at the ready, scale when it is needed, and dormant when it is not, therefore saving investment and capital. And as a community of geospatial experts, we need to make our community bigger. We need to go out there and geo-enable those organizations involved in emergency response, but also in other sectors, so that they can be mobilized at a moment's notice. We need to support the development of a multi-jurisdictional framework to maximize effectiveness and efficiency of sharing geospatial data in a time of crisis. We need to be proactive and make sure everything is connected, interoperable, and standardized. We need to get that infrastructure deployed, the one that already exists now, the one that we have established and that works, at minimum for our federal family, but why not for provinces, territories, and municipalities and other stakeholders to enable the effective exchange and collaboration on an ongoing basis. And we need to have better governance and protocols in place to quickly mobilize government and private sectors' expertise in the geospatial domain when needed. Voilà ce que nous pouvons faire maintenant. Mais nous devons aussi regarder plus loin. Vous savez très bien que d'intégrer de multiples sources de données, de les rendre compatibles et facilement utilisables ensemble peut représenter beaucoup de travail. Il s'agit souvent de la plus importante contrainte à une réponse rapide en cas de crise. Compte tenu que la quantité de données disponibles est sans cesse grandissante et qu'il est difficile de prévoir de quelle information nous aurons besoin pour faire face à la prochaine crise, il devient rapidement irréaliste de croire que nous pourrons facilement pré-traiter et harmoniser toute l'information requise, sans trop même savoir quelle information nous aurons besoin et à quel moment. C'est pourquoi il faut développer de nouvelles approches, de nouvelles technologies. Se demander comment le machine learning, l'intelligence artificielle, le big data analytics peuvent en venir à nous aider à réaliser ce travail d'intégration, de standardisation, de compilation, en minimisant l'intervention humaine. Rendre les choses les plus automatiques possibles et en temps quasi réel. C'est le vrai défi qui est devant nous. Si nous désirons être en mesure de faire face à n'importe quelle crise rapidement, peu importe sa nature. Dans un contexte comme celui-là, nous pourrions alors mettre l'emphase sur la création de nouvelles connaissances, sur les analyses, sur les prédictions, sur la prévention, plutôt que de chercher à traiter et à compiler encore plus de données. Donc, une illustration ici pour vous montrer l'importance de la cartographie ou de la géomatique ou de la géolocalisation. Cette carte, dans un contexte de pandémie, cette carte ici remonte à tout près de 170 ans. Elle a permis d'identifier la localisation d'un seul puits qui était à l'origine d'une épidémie de choléra. C'est donc à l'aide d'une carte qu'il a été possible de déterminer à l'époque l'origine de la contamination et de prévenir les nouvelles contaminations. So all that to say that we know that we can predict events by having the right geospatial data and tools. We know that companies are already tracking our movement through our cell phones. And during the COVID response, we saw many of these companies coming out of the woodwork, claiming the ability to show where people have been, who they have been in contact with, and how our social policies are actually affecting infection rates. The ability of location-based information to do more than just show status and get us close to prevention is here. But privacy in this case is an issue. We will see. A lot of behaviors have changed and policy has changed as well over the recent times. Hard to say if what is difficult to accept today will not be tomorrow's new normal, so to speak. Many tough leaders are looking towards the post-pandemic world and what some outcomes it might bring. So when this pandemic ends, we will see social reconstruction with social policies that are very different from that now of today or yesterday's. And we may never go back. There will be economic recovery as government repays debts, invests in stimulus projects, and right through the highs and lows of financial recovery. And from a federal government perspective, there will be a reshaping of public service, likely, as we return to work. I haven't seen our digital infrastructure being pushed and shown what it can do when we remove our barriers and limitations. These are big issues to tackle, but this will be our new normal. What we do know, however, is that the right data in the right place at the right time is more essential than ever. So in order to initiate a discussion, I'd like to propose a few questions. So how do we capitalize on what we've learned? How do we move from slowly getting our geospatial data house in order to actually leveraging all the technology innovation solutions available to us to deal with the enormous amount of data that's out there waiting to be leveraged in the geospatial environment. How do we mobilize analysts and experts ready at the moment's notice? How do we move technological transformation much faster to support all of this? I believe we can answer these questions through our COVID work. We have shown that it is possible to move from reactive to a place where geospatial capability can actually change for the better the outcome of emergency events like the one we've seen. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Éric, for that great talk. Éric, I think you're still on mute. There you go. So thanks for that. You posed some very interesting questions there at the end. I had a question that I wanted to ask you to maybe kick this off a little bit. Is there anything you feel that the Canadian geomatics community can do, either as individuals or organizations, to help support COVID efforts in any way? If it's helping, is there a way to help CCMEO, NRCan, the government, or each other as individuals in such a difficult time? Is there something we could do?
Well, first of all, let me just do a little bit of a check. Can you guys hear me well?
Yeah.
Perfect. I would like to answer this question a little more broadly. And as I said in the presentation, I think it's not only about COVID, it's about getting ready for any event that can be thrown at us. Either it's a second wave of COVID, or either it's the next disaster or the next crisis. It could be social, it could be health, or it could be environmental, it could be anything. So it's very hard to predict what data actually is going to be required next time around. So essentially the invitation is to go out there as a community and try to geo-enable all the data that we have without even knowing if that data is actually going to be required, if it's the one that's going to be required next time around, right? And actually what actually keeps me up at night is that data is being produced out there and generated much faster than we can actually integrate it, right? Through our traditional ways of processing data and making it ready for analysis, right? So the way that the data is being produced is exponential. So we can never catch up if we use our traditional means of processing the data. So we need to turn, while we're still, for the next thing tomorrow is actually going to be making sure the data is being cleaned, is being standardized, is being organized, is being shared in an open environment platform, so we can actually leverage it, right? So that still is today, but if we really want, at the same time as we do that for the stuff that's critical now, we actually have to look at how we're going to do it tomorrow in an environment where there's a 10 times or 100 times more data than there is today available. We need to turn to different types of solution, and that's why in the presentation I was referencing, new technologies, innovation, machine learning, AI. So how these technologies, we should start dedicating more time on these technologies to make sure that these machine learning, the software, it doesn't need a human intervention or less human intervention to actually process data, right? Because there's going to be so much data out there that it's impossible for us, the community, to actually deal with everything that's required. So we need solutions that are going to do that for us. So the data is there, ready to be leveraged. And I think that's actually to me, the big challenge in front of us.
Thank you. We're going to go to the Q&A from the audience now. We've got one from Nick Kellett. Eric, I don't know if you can see the question. I can summarize it. Nick is asking, as part of this standardization effort, do you think it is important to involve not only the Canadian geospatial community, citizens, as well as business and governments, but also form partnerships with international communities as well? For instance, there is a lot of geospatial expertise in the UK and Europe, amongst other places we could tap into.
Well, maybe the answer should be, all hands on deck, right? But there's always this balance between authoritative, making sure the data is fit for purpose, and when we leverage either community or the general public to contribute information, or there still needs to be some sort of a check or validation of that information, and that could be the role of more the government agency. So if we can actually have some of that work done by other different communities, and we would kind of retrench and making sure validating that information, that would be the ideal model. Now, exactly how to go about that, and I do touch base a little bit on that in the presentation. There's so much that could be done from a simple cell phone or mobile or a device that we could acquire information, that we could tap into people's movement, places where they've been, what they've seen, and what they can contribute. But there's always this balance between a confidentiality and the respect of people's lives and acceptability of that. But that may change in the future. As we saw in this response, there's already technologies available out there. If everybody would actually allow to be tracked in an app for public health reason, for example, in the COVID, we could know who was where and who they were in contact with just based on their cell phone. But there's very little acceptability of that. And I think that situations like the one we're through right now with COVID may actually change that a little bit. And it may become a little more normal. And we see more and more people actually allowing such applications on their device to track them for public health reasons. And that's one of the ways this could be done. But it could be done also for a number of other reasons.
Thank you. We've got another question from the attendees. It's from Kevin Jones. Eric, you spoke about standardization being a critical component for improving access to imagery. Fully agree. Is CCMEO looking at CARD 4L as a way to create standardized products for Earth observation imagery?
So thanks for your question, Kevin, and you got me out of my depth. I would actually have to turn back to our experts. I know we're looking in a number of avenues for standardization of both imagery and also our other geomatics info. But I would have to turn back these questions to them, quite honestly, to get a little bit more of an answer on which are the ones that are more promising as those that they investigate.
Thanks for that. We've got more questions coming in. I'm just trying to parse them a little bit. We've got kind of a broad question from Dennis Haynes. Basically, thank you, merci Éric, for the visionary keynote. How do you see Canada leading the world in the geospatial and hydrospatial? So that's a big one.
Yeah. Well, in this case, Well, for all the geospatial, I think we can play, given the size of our country, right? And the number of people we are, right? We really have to turn to innovation. I think one of the things we could essentially do is break, tear down the barriers between various organizations, right? And we're still, and I know this sounds kind of redundant, we hear that time after time, that we're siloed, right? But if you go to the different departments, and that was kind of the challenge in this COVID response, right? We were quite proud that with the help of the private sector as well, we were able to put something up in a very little time and go over these barriers. But we're bragging about it today because this is not something we do day in, day out. And I think the thing we should do right now, as to answer Denise's question, is actually bring down those silos. And regardless if you're in the at NRCan or at StatsCan or at the Hydrographic Services or Environment Canada or even the provinces, this should mean nothing, right? All of those data sets and technology we developed, we should share them and work together, not counting who's done what and who has invested most and who does it belong to. And we kind of struggle doing that. And even in the hydrospatial world, right, we in our can and see we still struggle to work with these folks that are we're kind of land and their water, and we're still trying to get these things together, and it's a little bit difficult, and it doesn't take 72 hours like we did for COVID because there was a crisis. And that is the thing that I think could really help if we were able to do that. And so leverage what we were able to do in 74 and show us, hey guys, we can do this in 72 hours. Why does it take us years actually to bring the water and the land information together?
Excellent. We've got another question coming in. It's from Nicholas Martinez. I think Nicholas is with Stats Canada. Hello, Éric. You mentioned preparing data and ensuring it's geo-enabled for a potential future public policy crisis. How do we ensure that in a post-COVID world, this remains a priority of government funding when we are likely to see contraction in program spending? Also, has Statistics Canada been engaged in prioritizing the geo-enabling of data?
Two things. I'll answer the second question very quickly. Yes, statistics is very well on board with everything that we've seen today. They were one of the major contributors, and we're working more and more with them on geo-enabling the information that they have, making sure it can be leveraged. So that this one is going fairly well. And for the first question, you're totally right. You know, how we will do this in a post-COVID when there's going to be contraction and make sure government keeps funding. You know, to think that government is going to, the question alludes to, the government's going to increase funding on this is probably not realistic, right? So it's us to decide what we want to prioritize as leaders in government, right? We're not going to get additional money to do something like that. It's a balance. And right now, I think too much of our efforts are kind of dedicated at our traditional business line, processing the data the way we use, right? When I say we need to go to new technologies, to innovation, to AI, help machine actually, and software and artificial intelligence, help us do the work we were doing with the resources we have before. So it's more of a balance, right? I think we need to say, if the future is in those technologies, why is it we invest only a small percentage of our capacity into those technologies? Oh, because we have to sustain all of these other traditional processes. No, we need to shift them together. So it's more of a question of leadership in government. Those that have seen that as well, if we can actually raise the awareness that this is the problem, right? If we keep our old tools and processes to solve a problem that's different tomorrow, it's not going to work. So we need to shift that capacity. It has to. So we have to make those decisions. Say, okay, let's invest more in those new technologies and innovation, rather than it to be kind of an investigation portion. It has to become one of our main business line, developing that intelligence and innovation.
Great, thank you. Let's go to the next question. Let's take something a little bit different from Jeff Zeiss. The construction industry represents 8% of Canadian GDP. Construction productivity has been stagnant for decades. Are you considering construction as an area where the Canadian geomatics community could make a meaningful and significant contribution to the Canadian economy?
Well, honestly, right, it all depends from what perspective, right? As a government, you know, NRCan organization traditionally providing national scope mandate coordination with provinces. For me, for my organization specifically, to go down into that level of granularity, construction, likely not a national mapping agency or provincial agency like that, but I'm sure from the private sector, they're already there. There's a lot of things happening in the construction sector already with geomatics, right? For example, we use LiDAR for large scale, such as, the 3D mapping or flood monitoring, and at a scale that is appropriate for a provincial, national, but LiDAR technology is also being used in construction site and buildings. So I think it's already there, and I think it's more an area, and I may be mistaken, but more for the private sector to tap into.
Thank you. Next question is from Christopher Hewitt. How would you encourage and support academics to publish their geospatial data?
Well, the baseline, regardless, academic or private or government or other types of organization, to me, it would have to be, it's open data as much as possible and make it as discoverable as possible on the internet. That is kind of the solution, right? It's much easier from that perspective, more than having to reach out, giving calls, come into letter of agreements with partnering organizations so we can actually tap into information. Everything that could be open should be. And I understand there's privacy, there's IP rights, there's a number of things, but as much as possible, that should be the way to publish information. And not only publish it, but also make sure that whatever means that it's published openly, it's easily discoverable on the internet. So even, not individuals, but actually computers and processes can actually find it and retrieve it almost automatically. That would be my suggestion. I know there's a lot already being done, right? We've made tremendous progress over the last 20 years on that front, but there's still lots to do.
Great, thank you. We've got another question from Orlando Rodriguez. What is your opinion about, and this is in quotes, geomatics experts that don't support tracing contact apps based on location? What is missing in this kind of app in order to be more accepted, I think is what he means.
Well, to me, it's not much of a geomatics expert, or it's more of a value or policy, right? It's how do I feel with that kind of, it's the evolution of the perception of confidentiality, right? That happens over time. And right now we're at a point where that is changing, I think, right? Because the impacts of not doing it, we're seeing them on a daily basis with COVID. What is the impact of remaining, keeping your privacy to that extent? So we're probably, it's not so much, I think it's the whole population that is currently reestablishing their comfort line, their comfort zone versus privacy. Right, and we see all these science fiction movie where there's no privacy anymore, but they're not so off after all, right? At some point, this is currently moving, and right now it's moving for some very good reasons, right? We always picture all of the horror stories of what would happen if, there would be no privacy, but there are contexts and where we're realizing that, well, maybe there's some benefits at some point where we limit the privacy. So it's a balance between, you know, the regulations and the policy that are going to be established with the comfort of the people versus that. And it's always that for any policy, it's always adopted when the population is ready for a policy like that, or there's a critical mass of the population that is ready for that.
Thank you. So we've got a question from Blair Scriven. In future, could we do what Johns Hopkins Hospital did and create an online map that shows COVID-19 or future viruses in municipalities across Canada? Are we able to do this yet?
I think, well, first of all, we've seen so many dashboards out there, but obviously Johns Hopkins was the one that, I don't know if they were first, but they were very early, and their online map was actually the inspiration for pretty much all of the other dashboards and sites that are out there, including ours, the one that we showcased there. So we have one that we use, the Canadian. So the difference between what Johns Hopkins had, and I'm not, is that we made sure that we went to, you know, official public health organization. And I think, are we able to do this yet? We have done some of it already in that application that we develop with health agencies and stats, and can we go into another level of detail, right? And into, you know, mapping, you know, specific, you know, buildings and health facilities, and even, you know, other types of public places. I think we're not so far off. We could do a little more. We can do it to a little more detail, but that's kind of the level down of coordination at a very local level. That's, we're able to coordinate with the federal and the provincial and the local health authority in our response. But to go down to the specific buildings, either they're a health or a public building, we haven't yet gone to that level of detail, and that is tremendous work. But I don't think we're that far off yet.
Thank you. So this will be our last question through the Q&A. It's from Susan Etheridge. Thank you, Éric. You've touched on investment in new technologies such as machine learning and AI as a way to keep up with massive data production a few times. To what extent has the CCMEO incorporated such technologies into its day-to-day? Are policy and funding the only roadblocks to fully embracing them?
Actually, I don't think we're, in our Ken, we're very different from other departments in the sense that over the last years, we've piloted a lot of that. So right now what's happening, and it's absolutely normal in that when new technologies like that, there's early adopters and people actually pilot this information, they do tests, and we've done some fantastic thing with automatic mapping with AI, and I think that this is happening in many departments. Right, so we already have a portion of our portfolio that's entirely into these technologies and innovation. Is it enough? As I mentioned, I'm not sure, right? Probably should be more. But right now what we see is that this investigation, piloting, investment in AI, and machine learning is happening in most departments, either they're geo or not, right? And there's a point where enough of that has been done. It has to come together. It's normal that when you start, you know, investigating and with new and playing and developing new innovation, that you do it a little bit behind closed doors just to see what can this get me. And there's a point where it's mature enough and you know this is the where to go, that you need to open up and say, who else has been doing the same thing? Who else has been investing behind closed doors? And how can we bring all of that into one? Right? We're talking about our data and how open data helped us all pool our data together. Well, same thing for AI, right? At some point, we're going to have to open our doors and say, this is what I've found. This is what I've been able to do with machine learning and AI. What have you been what have you been able to do in this other department, this other sector, at another level of government, and say, can we bring all of this together, right? And rather than work in isolation, and is that we're going to be way more effective as a community if we all put all of our efforts in that area together. I think we're at that crossroad where we're about to do that.
Thank you very much, Éric. So that's going to be the last question for this session. Éric, thank you so much for sharing the work that you're doing at the CCMEO, taking the time to share with the community. We really appreciate the team's effort in helping us organize the event behind the scenes and getting the word out to everyone in Canada and with our friends overseas as well.
Well, it's a pleasure, and thanks to you for the invite.
Thanks again. So everybody, that's going to be the end of this session. We're going to leave this room open. This is room 1. There's another Zoom room opening after the break, so we'll be having 2 sessions. So check your schedules as well. We hope that you jump into our new Slack channel that we've created for the event, New Ways of Networking and Communicating. And so we're taking a pause. We'll be back in about 30 minutes. Thank you all.